You know that creepy feeling when you're deep into a terrifying horror game and start realizing it's all about you? Well, my friends do. If you haven't played Madison, imagine being trapped in a haunted house with a girl obsessed with demonic rituals, and your only tool is a camera. Wait, that can't be right. Yes, playing the game is already a nerve-wracking experience on its own, especially in the VR version. But I recently had an idea to make it even creepier. In just 3 days, some close friends are coming over for what I'm calling a chill night game session. But they're not ready for what's coming. I'm going to hack Madison VR and secretly replace some of the game's old creepy assets with eerily edited pictures of my friends that went seamlessly into the game. Yeah, trust me, it's right there. How long until they notice that all those cursed subliminal messages hit a little too close to home? Although, to be completely honest, I have no idea how hard it is to modify a VR game like this. I'm not even sure if it's possible in just 3 days. But hey, in the name of broken friendships, let's find out. Everything starts with this file that contains all of Madison's game data. Can't exactly tell you how to get it, but I strongly advise you to buy the game. It costs about the same as 2 pizzas, offers hours of fun, and supports the developers. Now we just need a way to open it, and after several hours of suffering and trying multiple tools without success, I finally came across one called UABEA. It's in the game. I now had access to thousands of different assets, including textures, and managed to export around 2,000 of them to a folder. At this point, I just wanted to test if I could replace one of those texture images with a random image of the same size. But I soon found out there were several time-consuming steps I had to follow to push my modified version of the game to the VR headset without it crashing. So who knows how many hours I've wasted on this. Until I finally got it working.
Oh, we entered the game. That's progress for sure. And if I'm not mistaken, the texture should be a photograph inside this sandbox. So, oh yeah. Considering the time I've wasted trying to put this texture inside the game without it crashing, yeah, this is definitely a big step forward.
I even did another experiment where I drew over an existing photo, and it also worked. Time was running out, but now it was just a matter of identifying which assets I wanted to replace and with what. In the meantime, I had also started thinking about what content to sneak into the game related to my friends, with a special focus on my friend Jorge. If everything goes well, I think you'll understand why he is my main target. I then went through an exhausting process of listing everything I know about my mates, and stalked them across their socials to collect random photos and the most obscure references to life events. Once I had a plan, I moved on to execution and spent the rest of the time editing game assets and inserting the new content into the game. And before I knew it, it was already 7 AM on Friday. I hadn't tested the final version and I slept exactly 0 hours. I also couldn't sleep during the day because I was stressing too much about all of the things that could go wrong. Will the game even run without crashing? Will my friends immediately figure out what's going on? Is Jorge still alive? Or is this already happening inside a VR game? Doubt was definitely creeping in, but soon enough I was already setting up all the equipment for the session and setting the mood with a more eerie vibe. Friends were starting to arrive, including our very special guest, Jorge. Gabriel showed up last and instantly wished he hadn't come at all. Before starting the session, I quickly went over how things would go. One person uses the VR headset, and the others watch on the TV and help them get through the game. I'll be recording the in-game footage with this camera instead of using the VR headset, to avoid draining the battery or crashing the game. And finally, yep, they have no clue what they've signed up for. Just look at their happy faces. They don't suspect a thing. Soon enough, we're all gathered around the TV, ready to play a special version of Madison VR. We spawn in this very small room, and one of the first things you see is the sandbox. In the original game, it doesn't have a QR code stamped on it, but once you scan it, it redirects you to a website that says
Insane mode activated.
But this actually does nothing to the game, it is all to spice things a little.
George in 3 hours.
Soon enough, you're able to walk out of the room into this other area, which definitely has a lot going on. There's a lot of things that I wish I had done differently if I had more time. But one thing I'm really glad I didn't change is the painting that appears right at the beginning of the hallway. You'll notice that my friend Cesar has a keen eye for detail, so depending on what I had put there, the whole operation might have been uncovered, then and there. But now it was finally Jorge's time to shine. He entered the ritual room. Just entering it was enough to scare Jorge, but I actually hid a lot of secrets in there. Yeah, Jorge is terribly afraid of them. But that same chair hides 2 more secrets that are still very well hidden. I mean, Jorge really seemed to feel it every time he saw the chair. Then there's all these pictures. I was trying to help Jorge grab a camera from his inventory so he could take a close-up photo of one of the paintings. But he seemed to have other priorities.
This is not a great song.
Once again, Jorge must have sensed that something was very wrong, so we decided to switch players. Although this is far from over for him. Now, that's a pretty curious photo. The camera exposure makes it hard to see, but this is what we're actually seeing on the screen. At a quick glance, he would just say, and when you look behind the photo, I might have written this message. And George Backwell wasn't the original name, it was actually Albert Maxwell. So, the guy in front, that's not George, but they do have something in common. Yeah, George is starting to feel the chills on his skin, but little does he know just how deep these strange coincidences go. Now it was my turn to play, and I went back to the hallway. This box has a hidden picture somewhere, and I was just trying to find it. And I couldn't pass my turn without sneaking a quick look at these 2 mysterious pictures. It was now Gonçalo's turn to play, and we moved into this very special room, where the narrative I created and Madison's story mostly collide. Originally, there were newspaper clippings on the wall talking about this Madison girl doing some rituals and whatever. I edited the ones on the right, so now they include headlines about how a guy called Jorge Backwell went insane and ended up killing all the demons that were pretending to be his real friends. By pure coincidence, Jorge Backwell is also 25 years old, plays the violin, and he has already been caught naked in the streets. But hold on. What's that on the other side of the room?
Coming through.
Consegues ver algum código?
Era para ir jogar, né?
Essa merda toda. Pega fogo essa merda toda.
Run from... Run from sofa.
Mano, pessoal, tchau!
At this point, Gonçalo unknowingly captured a very special photo of his high school band, right as we started reinforcing the crazy coincidences between George and George.
O gajo é violinista, tem 25 anos! Olha aí, as passinhas. O gajo que é o Zeli e foi encontrado a falar sozinho no engano. Consegues passar para trás? Imagina que
At this point we move to the living room, where apparently there are a lot of chairs with a demon texture I modified. That means all of these chairs have a huge secret hidden below them that hasn't been uncovered. Yet. Electricity was cut off, so we had to turn it back on using a generator. But we still had to walk past this creepy stench.
Oh, vai ao sofá. Eu acho que o sofá que eles diziam, cuidado com o sofá, deve ser esse. Tenta de sentar no sofá. Acho que esse não funciona.
The lights were finally back on. But things weren't exactly going my way.
Shit.
Besides the VR headset suddenly crashing and forcing us to start from a previous checkpoint, one of my friends already had to leave, and the rest still hadn't fully realized that there was something deeply wrong with this whole thing, even by horror game standards. It was my turn again, so I kinda had to start making things more obvious.
Can I beat 100, man?
Abre as bebês.
25-year-old Taiwanese Jorge Backwell. Mano, e à direita diz Gabriel. Mano.
And finally,
Calma, Jorge Backwell, Jorge Costa.
is absolutely right. George Backwell is in fact Jorge Costa. George is obviously George, and Beck translates to Costa in Portuguese. Well, he is actually part of the original game, which I kept it to make the name sound more believable. What are the odds?
Backwell.
Costa. Mano.
Jorge Backwell.
Olha, Diogo.
Mano, faz 26 anos rápido. Olha.
I gave up my turn, satisfied that the spark was lit and that George was starting to spiral into my plot.
Vai às notícias, por favor, Isa. Eu quero que diz a notícia de Jorge Backwell.
Those inside.
Deixa ver, mais perto.
Talking alone, naked.
Mano.
George Backwell.
Maybe George was spiraling a little too fast, and I actually needed him ready for his next turn. And what better moment than this to make George aware of a detail that I guarantee you would keep him awake for the next decade.
Põe a foto mais perto que eu quero vê-la, mano.
So, this is obviously someone's severed arm, but whose? Not sure if you remember, but at the very start of the game, Cesar found a strange message in the sandbox.
George in 3 hours.
Open the sandbox, and there it is, the exact same picture. But wait a second. Is that another George tattoo? This is George's arm 3 hours later, while he's the one playing through the scariest part of the game? Oh, damn.
Chama agora.
Jorge, Jorge. Não vai dar, de certeza.
It was definitely too much for Josh to handle. Yet, Josh Backwell was still being chased. The VR headset ran out of battery, so we took this chance to eat some oranges and reflect on our past lives. I also went to get some water, in a very specific cup, I should say, and placed it right here.
Já está, já está.
I took one random, unsuspecting photo, and boom, the game crashed again.
Onde é que nós estamos?
Ei, bem.
Não, estás a gozar?
Mano, isso é sim,
Estás a gozar, mano.
Not only were we back to 5% progress, we were 2 more men down, I hadn't slept for 43 hours, George was already messaging his mommy, and they still hadn't seen most of the secrets I had hidden. Just say something! So, using my remaining brain power, I took action and went for one specific picture. One I knew would skyrocket George's suspicion without immediately blowing the whole operation.
Parece Alpha Coop, mano.
Por acaso não é Alpha Group. Ali pensa só aos...
Ei, não na foto.
Isto é Alpha Group, bro. É Alpha Group.
Et voila. At this point, people were seriously doubting George. I mean, how would George's school show up in this random, old, black and white picture in the middle of this random horror game, right? But after a while, George found the exact original picture.
Mano, pede-lhe para ir ver a puta se não é. Não é alfacu. Isto é alfacu.
Mano, é literalmente igual. É uma foto.
Isto é alfacu. Isto é alfacu.
É ou não?
É.
Como isso aconteceu?
Mano,
Isto é alfacu.
vai lá meter a foto. Olá. Onde é que é a foto? É isso.
Essa. A
À
direita.
direita. Isso.
Isto é alfacu.
Oh, mano.
Mano.
É ou não? Isto é
É
alfacu.
uma foto,
Oh,
meu.
Deus, isto é ridículo.
Isto aqui é uma coisa de ruína, mano. Nós estamos aqui na escola a brincar, mano. Estás a brincar, bro. Olha aqui o edifício do vidro. Aqui, mano. Olha o edifício do
Mano,
vidro.
olha o pineiro. É literalmente igual.
And with everyone's awareness raised, things started to get uncovered, bit by bit. And everything dropped with this one photo.
Sim, mas vai Oh my fucking god!
Eu dou moto ali embaixo.
Everyone already knew that something very fishy was going on. It was either the devil himself or me who was behind all of this.
Olha o que está aqui.
But we did spend countless hours digging for even the tiniest secrets.
Gonçalo, Hugo, César. Mano.
And for the final reveal, the big secret under the chair. Okay, now they know it's me.
And you and me, no matter how they toss the dice, it had to be.